Hey there everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to show you how to transform your English from good to great. But first, let me ask you something. What is the difference between these sentences? I met a woman last week. She teaches Spanish. Spanish is a language I've always wanted to learn. Last week, I met a woman who teaches Spanish, which is a language I've always wanted to learn. The first set of sentences is short and choppy. This structure makes the message repetitive because it isolates each piece of information. It communicates the idea clearly, but it's harder to follow or connect with the story emotionally. The second sentence is smoother and more engaging because it combines ideas, avoids repetition, and keeps the focus on the main point. So, what's the secret to tying everything together and making your sentences memorable? Relative clauses. What are relative clauses? They are parts of a sentence that give extra information about a person, thing, place, or idea. They start with words like who, which, that, where, whose. These are called relative pronouns. Let's look at an example. I met a man who is a chef. Here, the relative pronoun who refers to a man, and the relative clause who is a chef gives us extra information about the man. To use relative clauses, you first identify the word or words that you're going to give extra information about. This is called the referent. Then, you figure out where the relative clause begins and ends. It is essential that you understand the relationship between the referent and the relative clause because this helps you create more precise sentences. Instead of saying, I met a woman, the woman works as a teacher, you can combine the ideas. I met a woman who works as a teacher. Pretty cool, right? With relative clauses, you can say more with fewer words. So, to use relative clauses correctly, you must identify the relationship between the referent and the relative clause and use the correct relative pronoun. You might be wondering, what relative pronouns can I use and how do I know which is the correct one? Let me explain. As I mentioned earlier, a relative clause provides information about a person, thing, place, time. The referent and the relative pronoun helps us identify that referent, so depending on the referent, we use a different relative pronoun. When the referent is a person, we can use who or that. For example, the woman who helped me is a doctor. That is less formal and used more often in spoken English. Whom also refers to a person, but we use it when the person is the object of the sentence. For example, the woman whom I helped is a doctor. Notice the difference. In this sentence, I helped the woman. In the previous sentences, the woman helped me. When the referent is a thing or an animal, we can use that or which, for example. I need a book that explains grammar clearly, which is less common in American English and often has a formal tone. Let's have a look at an example that illustrates how important relative pronouns can be to understand the relationship between the referent and the relative clause. In the following sentence, which relative pronoun would you choose? He was the director of an institute who, which, or that became famous for an award. Let's have a look at the first option. I said earlier that we use the relative pronoun who to refer to people, so in this case, the referent is the director, a person. This sentence means the director himself became famous because he received an award. If we use the relative pronoun which, used to refer to animals or things, then the referent is an institute, a thing, and the relative clause provides extra information about the institute. The sentence means that the institute became famous because it won or was recognized with an award. The director is associated with the institute, but the fame is attributed to the institute, not the director. And then we have the relative pronoun that, used to refer to things, but it's often used in casual or spoken English to refer to people, so in this case, the referent is not very clear. That could refer to the director, a person, or an institute, a thing. Although in most cases, people will understand that it refers to an institute. There are other relative pronouns that can be very helpful. For example, where and when. Use where to refer to places and when to refer to times. For example, this is the town where I grew up. Do you remember the day when we first met? And we use whose to show possession. For example, that's the girl whose dog ran away. This is the house whose roof was damaged. Using whose for things might seem unusual at first, but it's perfectly correct and avoids awkward sentences like, the house, the roof of which was damaged, needs repairs. So far, I have highlighted how relative clauses provide extra information and allow you to combine two sentences into one. Now let's do a quick recap to avoid common mistakes. Make sure you identify the referent, the word or words that you're going to give extra information about. Remember, relative clauses start with relative pronouns, so don't forget it. Depending on whether the referent is a person, object, a place, time, etc., we use different relative pronouns. And that's it for today. Next time, we are going to look at different types of relative clauses, so if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now that you know what relative clauses are and how to use them, don't forget to practice by writing your own sentences in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.